Welcome to Collision, the podcast where we discuss the fun and sometimes complicated collision of real life and trusting God. If you're curious or confused about how to engage the world we live in, we hope our conversation here helps. Now, let's get into this episode of Collision.
Welcome to the Collision Podcast. I'm Matt Manning, the senior pastor here at Crossroads Church, and you might notice that as we begin season 3, it looks a little bit different.
Just a little.
Either, James cut his beard and dyed his hair, or I got somebody new sitting next to me, and the reality is I have somebody new sitting next to me. Everybody, Stu Jackson.
Thank you.
That's right. So, Stu, you're a part of Crossroads Church, and
I
as
am.
we were kind of reimagining the broadcast a little bit, I thought, you know what, if there was a guy sitting next to me that wasn't James, I wanted it to be you. And so maybe tell your dozens of fans.
Dozens
And dozens of
I am
fans
going
out
to
there.
double the watch of this podcast
there
with
you
my dozens of fans.
That's right. Maybe share a little bit about your family. You're married. You have kids.
Yes.
What you do in life. Yeah, introduce yourself
All
to the
right,
world,
fair
man.
enough. So, obviously, Stu Jackson. Married, yes. The rock of my world. My lovely wife, Kara. I'm sure right now she's probably wondering what damage I'm doing to everyone around me as we're recording this podcast. Love you, babe. We have 2 grown kids. As weird as that is, we actually went through 2 weddings in the past year.
Yeah.
Never in a million years did I think that I would have a 22-year-old son and a 20-year-old son married. I figured they'd be 30 living in my basement, and I wouldn't know what to do with them. So
But there they are.
There they
married,
are.
and That's successful parenting right there, man. They've both mostly emptied the nest.
Well, they're not coming home, so mostly is yeah.
I say mostly because they might still be on the payroll from time to time.
Well, that's true. The phone calls. Dad, yeah, okay. How much do you need? So yeah, I get that. So, loving that. You know what? Honestly, people ask what I do, and professionally, I'm a cybersecurity engineer, which is really weird to be behind a microphone because cybersecurity engineers don't go behind microphones.
Yes, but you're odd.
I am odd. I am. I will tell you that I have a degree in communication from the University of Colorado Buffaloes.
Wow. Yes, go prime time.
Thank you, Prime. Thank you, Dion, for stepping in. 30 years after I was there. But thank you for making everything. But what that means is I can stand in front of a group of people and talk a lot.
Yeah.
Don't get excited. It's not like I can do anything with media.
Yeah.
That's bad.
No, we already proved that before we even got started today.
I struggle with my phone, so
you were
it is
completely useless in trying to get this thing going.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but
except
we're
I
there.
reminded you of the simple, computer things. Did you reboot it?
Yes,
That's my job in life. So.
Yeah. Did you flip the cords? Ironically, that worked.
Right. Oh,
So-
weird, huh? And then the other thing that I do, that a lot of my time goes towards is traveling to Iowa and Wisconsin where my kids live. So,
Yeah.
I think at some point I'll get an honorary citizenship from one or both of those.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I don't want that in the winter. I don't
No,
want that
neither of those.
citizenship in the winter.
No.
The summer it's beautiful.
I'm from Wisconsin. Madison, Wisconsin is where I was born.
I'm sorry. I mean, really, that's interesting. I
Yes,
did not
yes.
know that.
Spent the first 6 months of my life there, and then it was on. It was on. I made my mark in Wisconsin.
You
and then
made
I
your
had
mark
to go.
in Wisconsin. They
Then I
asked you
had
to
to go.
leave.
Yes,
They
that's
said
the way-
we've had enough of this kid
This-
already.
This is as good as it gets.
Madison I got to be honest. Madison's a nice place. I don't mind it. So, but I've been there. It's hard to drive. It's so weird for me when you go back, that direction, and you get kind of Mississippi Valley. Is my youngest is in Dubuque, Iowa, which is right on the Mississippi.
Yeah.
And you go there in the spring, and it's incredible. Colorado, you don't understand. I'm born and raised here. You have no idea what water is.
Yes.
Zero idea what water is. Yeah. And you go out there and you have this massive river that it's like, really? As a settler, I roll up on this thing and somebody goes, we should cross that. I'd look at them and be like, no, sir.
looks like the first town of stews happening right here.
This is nice. I like this right here.
That's
Somebody
cool.
else can be dumb enough to do that. But, you go back there and all these trees.
Yeah.
Colorado, you're driving down the road, you can see the mountains.
Yeah.
You see everything. Back there, driving down the road, you see trees.
You see trees,
And you know what's around the corner? Trees.
That's it.
So
it.
it's a little weird. Yeah, so
So, well, that's fun. And over the course of this year, we'll get to talk a lot about our adventures and what we're doing separately and together.
Yep, absolutely.
But one of the things when it comes to the Collision podcast is we love to bring faith and life together in ways that they kind of smash and then just have real life conversation of what that looks like. And so we thought we would start off this season really just talking about what does faith in public look like?
Sure.
And as we kind of, turn the page into this new year of 2025, one of the things that is really big right now is the Beast Games. So Mr. Beast, right, super YouTube star, has made bazillions of money, actually giving money. He's learned how to profit off of being a philanthropist.
I don't know. I have tried doing that, especially with my kids. I give money, I expect some back, and you know what happens? I'm not Mr.
Nothing
Beast.
happens. You're not Mr. Beast. No. And so he started something called the Beast Games, where he's giving away $5 million, 1,000 contestants, kind of a thing off of the Squid Games, popular on Netflix, right? And so one of those contestants in the Beast Games is like super outward with his faith. Now, I don't know the guy. I don't know where his faith. He seems genuine in his faith, but in episode 4 of that, as part of this game, he decided that he was going to pray for everybody. And as all that was taking place, like the way that they edited it, it was like cringe moment. You had people in there talking about like this public display of faith, that he's becoming this cult leader, all this kind of stuff. And there was a lot of like real, I don't know how else to describe it, like cringy moments.
Oh, yeah.
Which hasn't been unusual in the way that people who are very public with their faith has been really perceived through media specifically. And so like that's one area. Like, do you have any other thoughts of like where you've seen public demonstrations of faith in the world?
Now, you and I have talked about this before, and I think that's kind of the evolution of our conversations have come to this.
Yeah.
And one of the places I've really noticed it, and shockingly, in doing, and I'll be honest, I did a little research for the podcast because I didn't want to sound like a complete imbecile.
Yeah, that's right.
More than I already am. I get it. But if you're watching any of the athletes of today, and especially the football players, that seems to be where it's really starting from, is their public professions of faith.
Yeah.
And it's been phenomenal.
Yeah.
Because even, as I'm looking through the internet and seeing stuff, you're starting to see little trickles of news stories that are covering this. Today I found articles, Fox News, Outkick, CBS, all of these different places, and they're talking about the faith of these athletes.
Yeah.
And so to be honest, one of the places that really shocked me is after the college football championship on Monday between Ohio State and Notre Dame.
Yeah.
They talked about it on TV. It was shocking. Reese Davis and I don't
Was it Kurt Herbstreit? Was he the other one?
Actually,
Reese Davis was one of them.
Scott Van Pelt.
Oh yeah,
Scott
Van
Van
Pelt
Pelt and Reese Davis were talking, and they started talking about the players, especially Ohio State, because Ohio State, Notre Dame, Catholic college.
Yeah.
You kind of expect that a little bit more, I think.
Absolutely.
But Ohio State, there were football players out finding people and baptizing them.
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of stories of this last semester where there's like been this revival on the Ohio State campus that's been driven by the football players that are playing for Ohio State.
And it's not just other players that they're baptizing.
Yeah.
They're finding other kids on campus and sharing their faith with them. And so, Reese Davis said, and one of the things that really caught me is he said faith, or implied that faith, made these guys selfless. That as part of a team, that's one of the things you really want. You want to be selfless. You're a team. There's no I in team, right? That's the famous thing.
Yeah.
And he said, Reese Davis, national TV, said, I think there's power in it.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. And so, you start looking down and you start looking around, and you see the big ones. For the professionals, you see guys like C.J. Stroud.
Yes, every time.
Every time. There's no doubt. But it's not just him. You have Jaden Daniels, who's the quarterback for the Commanders. You have, let's see, I found them all. Sorry, gotta scroll down.
Yeah.
Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey's said stuff. Jameis Winston. And then, you know, I started digging because, you know, being in Colorado and being a Broncos fan,
Yeah.
you know, living here all my life, there is some orange and blue.
Is there? Okay.
There's some orange and blue, which means that I can't, you know, I'm sorry, I can't root for Kansas City this
No.
week. I can't do it. I'm trying.
Nobody's rooting for Kansas City.
I have good friends that are Kansas City fans.
Yeah.
And I can't do it this
Yeah.
week. Josh Allen all the way. But looking at our Denver Broncos, Bo Nix. Okay, so if you pay attention to the games, and now he hasn't been outward with it in his interviews yet.
Right.
But if you watch Bo Nix, on his arm, on his wrist guard is a cross. And he was asked about that when he was in college, because he did it when he was in college. And he said, football is an amazing game, but it will never give you constant joy. The cross I wear on my wrist symbolizes where I find my true joy. It doesn't come from success on or off the field. It comes from the good news of Jesus Christ and actively pursuing a relationship with him.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we see this like out in the world, right? Like there's these professional athletes that are making their public profession. We have people who seem to be a little bit more outspoken on things like Beast Games and all of that that's taking place. And maybe like one of the things that we could just talk about is like, what do you think the impact of these high profile testimonies actually have on the general public? Like, like where does that move us? And maybe even particularly when it comes to young people and the public expression of these high profile people and the impact that it's having in the youth. Because I look at it and part of what I see is like when it comes to at least adult spaces, there's still a little bit of like cringe. Like, you know, there's the, you don't talk about politics and money, right? Like those are the two things around the dinner table.
Yep.
You never talk about those. And there seems to be that kind of manifestation of people, or that manifestation of thought among people who are a little bit older, but it doesn't seem that way in youth. You have two young 20-somethings. What's that look like?
I do have two 20-somethings. And to be honest with you, going somewhere with that and down that vein, I was in Iowa with my son at the time. We went to the church he's going to, which ironically is named Crossroads.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think
it's a good name. It's a good name.
It's a great thing. Both my boys were at churches named Crossroads.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just saying we're leading the way because these guys are younger than this church. We're leading the way. That's it. We claim the name.
Or Crossroads is a bazillion churches in the United States.
No, we're leading the way.
We're leading the way, right?
Man.
I like it, Stu.
But we were there, and it happened to be Youth Takeover Weekend, I think is what they called it. And the youth pastor came up and gave the sermon. And one of the things he said that really resounded with me is today's kids or young adults or whatever are different than my generation, your generation, in that when we were younger, we kind of waited for our parents to show the way with faith and religion.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it was for me. I went to church, I went to youth group, and you just kind of follow along where the family told you.
Yeah.
He said what he's seeing and looking around, especially like with our youth program and stuff, the kids of today aren't waiting anymore.
Right.
They're not waiting for somebody to show them faith. They're going out and finding it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I took that and I went, yeah, wow. And then we start talking about these public declarations of faith, and you look at it with these athletes. You know, these are you know, depends on what you're talking about, but a D1 school, I'd tell you they're 21, but let's be honest, they've, you know, a lot of these guys are 6-year seniors or something like that now.
Super seniors.
Yeah.
Super seniors.
Super seniors. Yeah.
That's right.
Super, you know.
Just got my 8th year of eligibility.
Right. You know, how did I do that? But, you know, so you have these guys that are 23, 24 years old. They're on national TV. They have a stage unlike any other. And what's the first thing they say?
Yeah.
First and foremost, I want to give all glory to God.
Yeah.
Because of him, I am here.
Yeah.
Holy cow. And so we talk about how's that affecting people. I look around and so many of the kids today, you know, they stare at their phones. That's all they do. And what's really great about the whole thing before the whole TikTok debacle and all, you know, but it's still running. But kids they're scrolling through reels and shorts and all of the whatever. It doesn't matter what flavor it is. They come upon things like this.
Yeah.
and it's Jaden Daniels, or it's one of these quarterbacks from the college teams, or any number of these kids who have a national audience saying first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talk about that impact. Part of me says, is that why we're starting to see this movement?
Yeah.
You're starting to see this movement of younger people raising their hands and saying, here's my faith.
Yeah, and I think there's always, through the scriptures, we always see that there's a remnant of God's people, right? Even in the worst of times, in the driest of nations, there's always a remnant of God's faithful people that are carrying this through. And what's fascinating to me, particularly among the younger who have public platforms, such as these quarterbacks or football players or whoever, is that, we're in a place in America where statistically less than 2% of Gen Z are believers, and even less than that of the Gen Alpha that's coming up.
Right.
And so there is a level of if you're going to be a Christian in this day and age, it just means probably something different than when you and I were growing up, or even when our parents were growing up, where we are now in this post-Christian world. Right. And so to be someone who is of faith, actually, not that it means more in terms of who they are, but the way that it's demonstrated is differently, because they truly understand what does it mean when in the Gospels, right, that we're to take this to all the nations. Like what does that actually look like?
Sure.
And these guys who have been given public platforms actually go, well, this is what it looks like for me. Like I'm going to demonstrate my faith in this. And while that's happening, on one side, what made the ESPN stuff so fascinating that Reese and Van Pelt talked about it is that because historically media has actually shunned this side of it, right?
So very much so.
Like one of the famous things just happened last year, right? In the playoffs last year, when CJ Stroud, after the playoff game, they're interviewing him on NBC, and he gets up there and he says, hey, first I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus. And then, then he goes on and he talks about his teammates and the impact of the game. And when NBC rebroadcast that over all of their social media, they edited it in such a way that CJ Stroud gets up there and says, first and foremost, I want to thank my teammates, right? And it was through social media, there was actually this large cry for the hypocrisy of what NBC did in that moment. But there's this interesting thing that's happening, right? When it comes to the young people, they're very public with their faith, but media organizations don't know quite what to do with that, and in some ways are cutting or suppressing this. And so, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so a couple things that I've thought of as we're talking of, and I'm going to go off script, and sorry to Doug, our producer, and Matt, and all that stuff. This is what happens when you give me a microphone. I go that way, but something we talk about spreading the word and provide, showing your faith to others.
Yeah.
Now, right now, the kids of today are using technology, right?
Yep.
Technology lives with them.
Right.
What they keep in their pocket, in their hand, in their purse, or whatever, is a stronger computer than what put man on the moon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now you think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
The man on the moon was in a room-sized spacecraft.
Well, we put people on the moon with slide rulers, man. We didn't have any business going to the moon.
And now it's in your hand.
Right.
And if you watch SpaceX, you can watch the whole thing all the way up. It's crazy, high def. But as we look at that and we start seeing these kids sharing that, this is the generation that was born to that.
Yeah.
These guys that are 22, 23 years old, that's when the iPhones and everything really started to be developed.
Yeah.
They've never known differently. So think back to when our parents were parenting us.
Yeah.
They didn't have that.
Yeah.
So you follow along with family. So to me, part of that is we're starting to see that evolution of, God said, go share who I am with others.
Yeah.
Go, give grace and be a humble servant to all these others. You can do that in person, but now we have this technology that we can reach out and do that.
Yeah, one of the things I've often said is that, when we look at technology today and actually look back in the Bible, right? Christians have always used the technology at hand to spread the gospel. So when it was the Apostle Paul, The technology that he had was a pen and a piece of paper, right? And he wrote letters.
First book created.
Yeah, right. And so we actually have the ability to look back on time and see the technology that was used by Paul to the benefit of us in written form.
Absolutely.
Today, right, the technology of today is very much through what you've just described of phones and social media and a presence on in social media that is unheard of, right? Like you can literally be a nobody and have thousands of people following you.
Mr. Beast?
Mr. Beast,
Yeah,
right?
you
For
know,
example,
really,
yeah.
where did he come from?
Yeah, and so then the question becomes, if you have that kind of platform, how do you use it? And so I think that's one of the exciting things is that we see a lot of these young people using the platforms that we have to really further the gospel in the way that with the technology that they have is the way that I would say that. And so like that's a cool thing that's developing. So maybe to bring this like a little bit more practically down is for most of us, there isn't like a platform, like we don't have the microphone that CJ Stroud has, right? Even me as a pastor at a fairly large
we're
church.
getting there.
Yeah.
We talked about that.
That's right.
It's going big. Share it with your friends.
Share it with your friends. But the reality is that most people in this world will never have the platform that a CJ Stroud has. We'll never have the platform that a Bo Nix has. We'll never have the platform that, even will generate a conversation on ESPN, right?
Absolutely.
And so, like, when we think of practical ways of how, what I would say, like, for lack of a better term, low-profile Christians, how can we emulate these bold expressions of faith that we see? Because they are bold.
Sure.
So what does it look like in the regular everyday person's life?
Well, in one of the, I want to jump back just real quick because you asked about the media being reluctant to this, and that it all kind of ties together. The media, I look at it and they're still trying to catch up, much like we do. Mm-hmm. For a long time, the media was the news information source. Now it's not really. Now it's technology. Yeah. So they're still trying to catch up, and that's why you're starting to see cracks of these things when you start seeing articles on websites like not some dude that puts it together as a blog because he's that's what he does with his life. Yeah. But big names, Fox News, ESPN. ESPN broadcast the prayer before the Ohio State Texas game, I think is who it was. Yeah. Broadcast it. That never happens. Yeah. So I think we're going to start seeing a catch up where the media is not afraid of it necessarily anymore. But you ask the everyday man, the everyday normal Christian, how do you do these bold professions of faith? And that's a hard question, right? Yeah. Because you look at Mr. Beast and it's cringy. Yeah. Right? And we look at social media and, man, the keyboard warriors, they are vicious. Mm-hmm. Now, they won't stand in front of your face and tell you that, but they'll fire anything off when they can stand behind their computer. But I'm starting to see, and I sound old. It sounds old. When I look around at the kids, when we're in church, those darn kids. But we have a group of kids here at church who every Sunday they're at the front. Mm-hmm. And just to be completely honest, I love the kids of this church. Yeah. Every Sunday morning, I drive my wife nuts. She'll be the first one to attest to this. Yeah. I usually end up in a group of kids, and we're all standing around laughing. I'll have friends that come to church, and I'm like, sorry, I got to go see the kids. Yeah. It's something I look forward to every week. But I see that because these kids are at church, they're involved. Mm-hmm. And when they're standing at the front, if you look over and it's in the middle of praise and worship, they'll have their hands up. Yep. Now, I'll be honest, the girls are usually the ones with their hands all the way up. The guys in full guy tradition, usually it's like this. Yeah. Just barely above their shoulder. Yeah. And I've been like that. Yeah. Raised Catholic. Mm-hmm. You didn't put your hand over your head. That's right. If you raised your hand, you had to have a question. Oh, absolutely. And if you raise your hand over your head, you better watch out because your parents are liable to reach over and go, put your hand down. What are you doing? So, but I look at that and they're starting to do it. And it's those quiet things of I can have that faith that God, I'm here. There was a picture from this past Christmas. Was doing an event with somebody at a church up the road. It was for All Stars.
Yeah, at Discovery.
At Discovery. I was doing it with Jeff Tompkins. And there's a picture of me with my hand up.
Yeah.
And my wife turned to me and looked and said, "Are you okay?" Because my hand doesn't go over my head.
Yeah.
I'm one of those that they're, well, raise your hands. And I go, okay, these are raised. They're above waist level. Watch out.
You're holding the pizza.
Holding the pizza, carrying the TV,
Yep,
any of those. So, you start seeing things like that.
Yeah.
I have seen on the football field, on the high school football field.
Yeah.
I've seen guys take a knee and pray.
Yep.
After a game, and it's like, wow, holy cow! This is amazing.
Yeah.
Because that never used to happen. That was those guys.
Yeah.
And so those are where we can start seeing that, and you can see for adults, and that's for the kids, but for adults, not being afraid to show what your faith is.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways, actually, that I found in my own life, even before like being in ministry, right, being quote unquote a pastor or the senior.
I was
going to
say it's not really fair to show it in your own life when you're in front of a church every weekend. That's a little bit unfair, but okay.
But I think that like one of the easy things is when somebody brings a need of just going, "Can I pray for you?" Right, and when they say yes, of offering that right now, right? Like that is very few people in my life have ever rejected a word of prayer when they're in a time of need.
Sure.
That is a bold proclamation of the faith and a bold proclamation of who we believe in, God, that he has the ability to heal in these spaces, that he has the ability to hear, that he wants to hear from us, and to do that, right? To just make that in people's needs. Wow, that must be really hard right now. Can I pray for you?
Right.
And if you're comfortable, I'll even do it right now.
Yeah. And there was one time, and you probably don't remember, but it was after Pursuit.
Yeah.
Which, for those of you that don't know, that's the men's group that we do here once a month, last Tuesday. Just little advertising. You're welcome, James. But there was somebody who was going through a difficult time, and I happened to be standing there, and you looked at me and said, "Would you pray with me for this person?"
Yeah.
And the profound effect that had on me, and we weren't praying for me.
Yeah.
But for me to take a moment and say, "Well, wow, I can do that."
Yeah.
That was phenomenal to do that. So that, that kind of stuff is, that doing that.
Yeah.
And, being an example. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how many times in my life I've run into somebody that's, super churchgoer and I'm Mr. Churchgoer. And then you run into them out in public and you're like, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Who are you? Because this is not
absolutely.
the way. And so it's living what you believe.
Yeah.
Is something that, and that's what these athletes, that's what these famous people who are starting to profess that and doing that is not being afraid of who they are and being able to mention God.
Yeah.
I've been down that road where I'm terrified to be like, bless you. Oh, man, what did I do?
Yeah. Right.
How
will I be seen tomorrow?
Right. They sneezed. I said, bless you. They didn't respond. That's it. This is over. Friendship's over. I'm going to go hide in a hole. I don't know what I'm going to. And so it's, it's one of those of not being afraid.
Yes.
Of doing that and realizing that every step of the way, and it's weird that it takes a 22-year-old to remind you of that.
Yeah.
But every step of the way, hey, I'm here for God.
Yep.
It's him because I'm here.
Absolutely.
So, just taking that moment and, especially for the kids, don't be afraid of it.
Yeah.
It's okay to express your beliefs and your belief in God. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Stu, this has been a really cool conversation today, and we're going to do this every month. Me and you, once a month, we're going to get together and we're going to do some podcasting on stuff just like this.
Yeah,
and
who knows?
So thanks for being here today. Thanks for joining me. Any last thoughts before we close this down?
I do have a couple last thoughts. Number one, if you have something that you think we should talk about, catch us in church. If you don't know us, hopefully, and I'll be honest, I really hope we don't know you. I hope that somebody's passed this on to you and you're listening to it. That's my sincere hope, because I want to reach people, and I know Matt wants to reach people, and just show that it's normal for guys to be talking about God and Jesus and how it affects them in their lives. So Share it with a friend, talk about it. If you have ideas for us, let us know.
Yeah, you can send any idea that you have to info@crossroadsabc.com. Just put in the subject line podcast. It'll make it to us, and we'll dream up a podcast all the way around on that. So with that said, that's all we have today. So thank you, Stu, for being here. Thanks, Doug, for your work behind the scenes today. And we'll catch you same time next month. We'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to Collision. This podcast is a production of Crossroads Church in Thornton, Colorado. For more excellent content, please visit crossroadsabc.com.